Welcome back, friends. In previous lecture, we have been discussing on the important part of this text, that is about the text or story as well as about the writer. So let's continue with this text. My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall said. My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall said. A very self possessed young lady of 15. In the meantime, you must try and put up with me. Frampton Nuttall tried to say a few words which should flatter both knees of the movement and the aunt that was to come. Privately, he doubted whether these formal visits on total strangers would help the nerve cure which he was to undergo. So, there is a character called Mr. Nuttall, who is young lady of 15. She talks with her aunt. Let's continue here. I know how it will be, his sister had said when he was preparing to leave for the country. You will bury yourself down there and not speak to anybody. I shall just give you letters to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. Next paragraph. Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sappleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters, was one of the nice people. Frampton wondered whether Mrs. Sappleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters, was one of the nice people. Do you know many of people around here? Do you know many of the people around here? Asked the niche. When she thought that they had been silent long enough, hurriedly, anybody said, Frampton. My sister was staying here at Rectory. It means house of rector. About 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt, continued the young lady. Here, the story is narrated by the young lady. So, Mr. Nuttall said, a very self possessed young lady of 15. My aunt will be down presently, Mr. Nuttall said. Mr. Nuttall said, very self possessed young lady of 15. So, this is all about her behavior. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt, continued the young lady. Only her name and address, admitted the visitor. He was wondering whether Mrs. Sappleton was in the married or widowed state. Something about the room made him believe the former. Her great tragedy happened just 3 years ago, said the child. That would be since the time your sister was here. Her tragedy, asked Frampton. Her tragedy, asked Frampton. Somehow, in this restful country, spot tragedies seems to out of place. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on a cold October afternoon. This is a peak point of the story. You may wonder why we keep that window wide open on a cold October afternoon, said the niece, pointing to a large French window that opened on to a lawn. It is quite warm for the time of the year, said Frampton. This is the they are talking on the open window. Why we are putting here open window? It is quite warm for the time of year, said Frampton. But has that window got anything to do with her tragedy? Next paragraph is out through the window, out through that window 3 years ago, her husband and her two young brothers went off for their day's shooting. I repeat, out through that window 3 years ago, her husband and her two young brothers went off for their day's shooting. They never came back. It means she discusses here her husband and two young brothers went off for their shooting. But until they have not come here, that's why she has opened the window. In crossing the moor, moor means an open area of uncultivated land covered with rough grass. In crossing the moor, they were engulfed in a treacherous part of the marsh. Treacherous means dangerous. Marsh means a swamp, a low-lying wetland. Their bodies were never recovered. That was the dreadful part of it. In crossing the moor, moor means an open area. Okay, it is an open place or open ground where it is a small grass. They were engulfed in a treacherous part of the marsh. Their bodies were never recovered. That was a dreadful part of it. She is waiting still. They will come through this window. Here the child's voice lost its self-possessed note. Poor Aunt always thinks that they will come back someday. They and the little brown spaniel that was lost with them, spaniel, little brown spaniel, it is kind of dog, and walk in the through that window just as they used to do. That is why the window is kept open every evening until dusk. Poor dear aunt, she has often told me how they went out, her husband with his white raincoat over his arm. Do you know, sometimes on quiet evenings like this, I almost get a creepy feeling. Creepy means fear, bhiti, that they will all walk in through the window. She broke off with a little shudder. It was a relief to Frampton when the aunt hurried into the room with many apologies for being late. I hope Vara has been amusing you, she said. I hope Vara has been amusing you, she said. She has been very interesting, said Frampton. I hope you don't mind the open window, said Mrs. Sappleton. My husband and brothers will be home from shooting and they always come in this way. She rattled on. Rattle means talk increasingly and tiresomely. She talked tiredly. She rattled on cheerfully about shooting and the scarcity of birds and the prospect for duck in the winter. To Frampton, it was all purely horrible. He made a desperate effort to turn the talk to as less horrible subject. But he was conscious that his hostess was giving him only a fragment of her attention, and her eyes were constantly wandering past him to open window. So this is talk on the open window. Why they are putting open window? Due to she is waiting for her husband as well as along with two young brothers of him. Her. So let's see next paragraph of this story. The doctors have ordered me complete rest from mental excitement and violent physical exercise, announced Frampton, who, like many people, mistakenly believed that total strangers are hungry for details of one's illness, their cause and cure. Oh, said Mrs. Sappleton in a voice which only reflects a yawn at the last moment. Then she suddenly brightened into then she suddenly brightened into alert attention, but not what Frampton was saying. Here, there are at last, she cried just in time for tea. Frampton shivered slightly and turned towards the niece with a look of sympathetic understanding. The child was staring out through the open window with dazed horror in her eyes. She is afraid here due to its stranger story, which is narrated by her aunt. Frampton swung around in his seat and looked in the same direction. In the deepening twilight, three figures were walking noiselessly across the lawn towards the window. They all carried guns under their arms, and one of them had a white coat over his shoulders. A tired brown spaniel, that is dog, kept close at their heels. Frampton grabbed wildly at his stick and hat. The hall door and the gravel drive were dimly noted stages in this hasty retreat. A cyclist coming along the road had to run into the hedge to avoid colliding with him. Here we are, my dear, said the bearer of the white raincoat. It is a conversation of that those are come here. Here we are, my dear, said the bearer of the white raincoat, coming in through the window. They came into home through the window. Who was that who rushed out as we came up? A most extraordinary man, Mr. Nuttall, said Sappleton. Could only talk about his illness and dashed off without a word of goodbye or apology when you arrived. One would think he had seen a ghost. He had seen a ghost. I think it was the spaniel, said the niece calmly. He told me he had a horror of dogs. He told me he had a horror of dogs. It means he feared about the dog in his mind. He was once hunted into a cemetery somewhere on the banks of the Ganges by a pack of the wild dogs and had to spend the night in a newly dug grave with the creatures snarling and grinning and foaming just above him, enough to make anyone lose his nerve. This is all about the story. This is a stranger story. It is a mysterious story. It couldn't understand by us. So let's see points to ponder. The open window can be read as tale about telling tales. It showcases the theme of telling tall tales with the author's characteristic with irony, tongue-in-cheek humor. One could argue that the story is about the power of stories, which can be observed by the fact that the nervous gentleman is spellbound and in a trance, fully believing Varna's unbelievable story. This interpretation can be extended to also think about the power of stories and literature in general to influence people and transform lives, and transformative power of the storytelling. A good story can also have a cathartic effect that produces empathy and cleanses one's mind. This is all about the story. We will discuss another point in next lecture. Thank you.